The second that Haunting Adeline was announced as getting a film adaptation, Booktok immediately broke into 3 camps. The people who are excited, the people who are horrified, and the people who are wondering how they're going to adapt that scene. But I don't think this conversation is actually about Haunting Adeline. I think it's a much bigger and more nuanced conversation. So what the fuck is going on? H.D. Carlton announced that Haunting Adeline is getting picked up for a film adaptation. There's no release date, no casting choices, and no studio announcements. But the social media backlash began almost immediately, and Booktok has once again fallen into chaos and division. So why is Haunting Adeline so polarizing? Dark romance isn't new and has always been a hot topic. Discussions often revolve around the themes within dark romance books and what makes a dark romance a dark romance, and should this genre even exist at all. Haunting Adeline in particular has always been the most controversial and the book at the forefront of most of these conversations. Haunting Adeline contains graphic themes with extensive trigger warnings, and it includes depictions of graphic rape and sexual assault perpetrated by the main male character onto the female main character, and he later becomes her love interest. Division exists around Haunting Adeline even within the dark romance community itself, with some saying that Haunting Adeline takes it too far. Now, you don't have to like the book or the genre to have a critical, nuanced discussion without attacking the reader. One of the big debates right now is about whether or not this book or books like it can be or should be adapted to the screen. I have seen lots of good thoughts and points from readers on all sides of the spectrum, and I think that these are important conversations we should be having, but I feel like a lot of things are getting lost in the chaos that's ensuing right now. Now, reading is typically a more private, intimate, and more imaginative versus visual media. Books require active participation from the reader in a way that's a little bit different than like visual media. Now, I would argue that, most forms of media require some type of active participation from the participant. And of course, this can vary, but books require this active participation from the reader. We as the reader have control over how we perceive or interpret what we're reading, as well as how we feel about it and the pace at which we consume it. Now, these things are often, but not always, shaped by our worldviews or our lived experiences. Though this can be true for visual media removes the control of the pacing, as well as it takes away a lot of the imagination because of the visuals that we're given. So that can impact the imagination and interpretation of the events. Now, we also know that book to film adaptations often contain changes. How much changes depends. Some have more than others, but there are often changes to characters, scenes, and even plot points, to the point where sometimes it's not even the same story. I think it will be interesting to see what changes are made to the Haunting Adeline movie adaptation and how that will impact the reception of the adaptation. And I know that H.D. Carlton has said in the past that she did not want any changes to be made, but I just don't think that that's realistic. Now, let's talk about dark romance a little bit, because dark romance is a hot topic overall, and while Haunting Adeline is at the forefront of this debate right now, I think at the end of the day, this is really about dark romance. Now, dark romance does not equal relationship goals, and fantasy does not equal desire in real life. So reading a dark romance and even, enjoying or fantasizing about what goes on in that dark romance does not mean that a person wants to experience these things in real life. And the same is true for all genres, even regular romance genres. Just because somebody likes something in a romance book does not mean they want those elements in their real life. I have said in the past that fiction and books often inform or reflect reality. They portray the human experiences and ask us questions about the human experience. Reading and books can help us process and understand the world around us. And at the end of the day, readers are capable of separating fiction from reality, even though I think in a lot of elements these things are closely related. Reading can be a great way to explore things that you have complicated feelings about. It could be a safe place to rewrite your own trauma or your own story and give you a different outcome in a situation that you might have experienced before, putting you in control. I think that's one of the nuances often missing in this conversation, is that it is about the reader experience. It's about the reader being in control of what they're reading, how they're interpreting it, and how they choose to feel about it at the end. Are they going to forgive the abuser in the book? They're in control ultimately of the outcome, or how they feel about the outcome. Enjoying a book such as Haunting Adeline does not mean that you want to experience those things in real life. Dark romance is a complex genre with a wide range of themes and topics. Not all dark romance contains rape perpetrated by a main character or love interest, or even at all. For many readers, it's not the rape or the sexual assault or these things that are appealing or sexy in these books, if they're finding those things appealing or sexy. It's the desire, the thought that someone desires you so much. They're obsessed with you. They can't stay away. They can't help themselves. In real life, do I want a stalker? No, I've had a stalker before. I don't want that. To have this fantasy of someone desiring you that much, that is a lot of what is oftentimes being explored, at least for some readers, when they're reading these books. But again, this is appealing in fiction, not reality. Some people argue that certain books romanticize abuse, adaptations can normalize harmful behaviors, and wider audiences might not heed trigger warnings or even know that they exist. And others argue adults should choose what fiction they consume. Dark fiction has existed forever. Media literacy matters, and censorship conversations are a slippery slope. Can we criticize a book without condemning its readers? I think that's one flaw in the conversation that's been happening lately, is that the criticism has extended past the book and the genre and has gone into criticizing the readers. I have seen awful comments about even mutuals of mine. People telling them that they hope that they're raped or assaulted or murdered. It has been absolutely horrific, and we should be able to have these conversations about, books and the themes without attacking the readers. Can we acknowledge that fiction can make us uncomfortable without insisting that that piece of fiction shouldn't exist? I'm far less interested in whether Haunting Adeline should exist and much more interested in whether we are teaching people how to engage critically with fiction. We should be having conversations about trigger warnings, responsible marketing. Is Haunting Adeline even in the right genre? Should this be, like a horror erotica or something other than like dark romance? Conversations about age-appropriate spaces. Separating morality from reading preference. Being able to say, this isn't for me or this makes me uncomfortable without demanding that it disappear. So what are my thoughts? I don't think that every popular book needs an adaptation. I also think that this Haunting Adeline adaptation can be fine depending on how they choose to adapt it. But whether or not I agree with how it plays out, it doesn't mean that that film shouldn't exist. I think that dark romance deserves nuanced conversations instead of cycles of outrage. I think it's okay to dislike Haunting Adeline or dislike dark romance. And I think it's okay to enjoy dark fiction as an adult. I think that audiences are and should be capable of discussing uncomfortable media critically. And I think that social media has a tendency to flatten every conversation into you're either a bad person or you're defending bad things. What do you guys think? Can dark romance be adapted responsibly? Is there a line where certain stories work better on the page versus on the screen? Are we getting better or worse at media literacy? What responsibility do authors, studios, and readers have? I don't need everyone to agree with me. I'm much more interested in hearing thoughtful perspectives, whether you loved the book, hated it, or never picked it up. I think that we can have these conversations without attacking each other. For more content like this, book reviews, book recommendations, book theories or analysis, all things bookish really, I'm a mood reader who reads across genres. Give me a follow.